Hello BookTube. Today for Tag Thursday I'm going to be doing the Philosophy of Reading tag. This tag was created by Brandon's Bookshelf, and I'll leave a link to his original video down below. I've been seeing this tag making the rounds of BookTube, and it's well past time I have a go at it. I'm doing this video earlier than I normally do because I have some reading to do this afternoon, so I can get a head start on my day's reading of Thebes by Paul Cartledge. I decided to go with that after I finished Philip and Alexander by Adrian Goldsworthy. And I got to get 100 pages in today, so I have a good shot at finishing it on Friday. I have a doctor's appointment Friday, so yeah, not entirely sure how much I'll be able to get done. Anyway, let's get on to the prompts because there are 20 and these might take a while, and I've got about a 40-ish minute time limit to get these in, which means I might actually upload these about the time I normally do. But anyway, question number 1. What's most important? A good character, plot, or message? For me, it's plot. I think you have to have a really good story. The story is the most important, followed relatively closely by character. I think ideally both should be as good as possible, but I think the story, the plot, is a little bit more important than the character or characterizations. The message, that's so far a distant third that it's really rather only a two entity race. Because the message really doesn't matter unless you're an academic or a teacher or something. Question number 2. Should one read books about ideas or opinions they disagree with? Yes. Largely so they can, in a way, challenge themselves and really better formulate their own arguments, their own beliefs, modify, but at the same time, sometimes stories from or books from other opinions, I mean, particularly if this is like nonfiction, can be rewarding on their own. I mean, it can be well written, although perhaps a bit infuriating, but yeah, people should. If you want to. I mean, of course, the should is obviously you don't want to issue strictures and that sort of thing, but I mean, it's a good idea, I think. As question number 3, as tech advances, what do you think will be the role of books? Basically what it is now. I mean, tech advancement, I think, seriously changing the role of books, or I think that is so overrated. I mean, ebooks so far really haven't challenged physical books. I mean, those people who naturally gravitate to reading will continue to read. I don't really see any sort of tech advancement that would do what? Replace the book, turn far more people than are already into non-readers. I mean, yeah, I think the whole sort of tech advancement permanently or drastically altering it, I think it's overrated. Question number 4. How important are summaries, review, and art in your book choosing? Summaries to a certain extent. I will read the summaries, although I obviously don't do that in my book hauls. which I probably should, but I don't. But I do read the summaries for a lot of the books I pick up. Reviews, not so much. I don't really. I'm usually pretty much figured out what books I want to get before reviews come out. So not much. And art, sometimes I do. I'm attracted by the cover, and that will lead to my buying it, but not a whole lot, I think. Question number 5. Should one ever skim or scan a book? I think it's permissible to scan or skim a book if you're in a hurry, or it's just you're gleaning information or whatever. When I usually start to skim a book, that's when it's bailing time. Because I'm really not interested in it, and I want to get it finished as quickly as possible. Question number 6. Should reading always be enjoyable? Ideally, yes. Reading should be enjoyable. Question number 7. Is it important to be well read? Depends how you define well read. What do you mean by well read? That's a personal choice. It's ultimately only so important as much. It's only as important as the individual reader places on it. I would like to think I myself am relatively well read, although there are large gaps in my reading. Also, and how you define well read. If you're a huge science fiction or fantasy fan, that's how deep into the genre and in the genres past have you read, that sort of thing. So it's personally important, but externally, to other people, it's only as important as an individual reader makes it and how they define it. Question number 8. What is your book buying process? So I will usually, so what I do is I watch BookTube, a lot of BookTube. I love book hauls, primarily like Steve Donahue's Mail Hauls, Thomas of SFF 180s, Mailbags, others. I also look at publisher websites. I'll browse there, and sometimes I will look at like the New York Times book review. I don't read them, I just skim them, and I don't actually ever add them. But basically, I browse. I kind of gather, and then I'll add the books to either my Amazon wish list, my Libris wish list, and occasionally my book depository wish list. And then I will gradually kind of order by those books, not necessarily from those 3. I'll also order with Powell's in Portland, the storied independent bookstore, sometimes with Book People in Austin, which I don't order nearly enough with. Occasionally with Fable, it's a new-ish, because I think it's going on 2 years now, independent bookstore in Waco, close to where I live, which really would be better if I actually physically went there, because their shipping and handling is exorbitant. I don't know why. Also, university presses. I've fallen in love with ordering books from the University of Chicago Press and Princeton University Press, and I really should order with LSU. They've got some really good sales on quite a bit. Although most of what from LSU, it's really sort of more poetry. that I'm actually more attracted to than some of the LSU's history focus is not quite lines up with, I think, what I'm trending towards. Although I do have, I think, some interest in Southern history as well. But anyway, so then I'll basically use my various wish lists to eventually order them. It might take me forever because I've got like 1,000 or more books all over the place that I want to get. Anyway, question number 9. What is your reading process? Basically, I roam my shelves, I bellyache, I occasionally try to participate in booktube reading events that inevitably fail because, yeah, I don't have, I think, nearly enough books for a lot of these reading events to really have a good selection. And then I will, usually I can get 2 books in, sometimes I can get 3 in a week. I'll read it like a book over the weekend, maybe more depending how long they are. And then 1, maybe 2 during the work week. And yeah, that's pretty much my reading process. And then once I finish them, I'll log them into my reading catalog. Or not my reading catalog, my books read list. Which so far I have 145 or 146 books read and about 30 odd bales. Question number 10. How do you use what you read? I mean, inspiration, enjoyment. Let's move on, shall we? I don't like this question all that much. Question number 11. If you could download a book to your brain, would you still read? No, and I think this will never actually happen. So let's move on to this one too, or from this question too. Question number 12. What are your views on rereading a book? Do it. It's absolutely legitimate. I mean, sometimes it's a richer reading experience. You draw more out of it. You see things you didn't see on the first reading. It's great. I mean, if you have the time and then go ahead. Okay. I need to scroll down for questions 13 through 20. Question number 13. What makes a good book? Or a book good? Good writing, a good story, good characters, good world building, a lot of things. What makes a book bad? Not having those things. Question number 15. How do you feel about not finishing a book? So, obviously, I have 30 some odd bales this year. I bail quite heavily. Particularly with fiction, I have had a weird, frustrating reading relationship with fiction going on 2 years. I mean, even though I have bailed quite heavily before this. But at the same time, while I'm perfectly, I mean, if you want to bail, if I want to bail, that is great. I mean, unless you are a professional book reviewer or you read as ridiculously fast as Steve Donahue does, if a book is not doing it for you, if you're not enjoying it, bail. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have the time to mess around with bad books. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, now of course there are I guess, I mean, not everybody is as enthusiastic as gloriously, or not everybody finds bailing to be as gloriously freeing and what have you as Sean the Book Maniac. Myself personally, I'm always sort of second guessing myself. I'm always sort of, well, were there, is the book bad or just not for me? Or were there other reasons behind my bailing? Obviously, as many times as I've, in the past year plus, had tried to have a second and third go at Crooked Little Heart by Anne Lamott. I bailed on it when I first read it. I bailed again roughly around the same time I bailed the first time on my second attempt. And then I tried it a few weeks ago, before Nonfiction November, and I bailed again. Largely because by that point, I think I'm like, so, yeah, sometimes there's that being defeated and not really taking it all that well. Sometimes I can gloriously bail on a book, and then sometimes it irks me. So, but anyway, bailing a book is perfectly okay. Question number 16. Should the author's personal life matter at all? Ideally, not. Now, of course, this raises the question of what is meant by personal. Does the personal also cover the political, the public? I do think there should be some separation between the artist, author, and the work. But it is incredibly hard, particularly the more contemporary said artist, author is. But also, for example, does the personal also include active political participation? That's kind of an issue. So, of course, it's, sometimes better to just not really know much about the authors you're reading, because knowing too much can oftentimes really destroy wanting to read that author. An example for me would be Marion Zimmer Bradley. I think Michael K. Bond mentioned her, or it might have been somebody else who did this tag. I've read bits of Mists of Avalon, and I have always wanted to have another go at it. But knowing what I know about her now, she, along with her husband, molested their children. I really don't want to read her anymore. I kind of want to get her. I have 2 books by her. I would like to get them out of my library, my collection. David Eddings. I loved his Elenium and Tamuli trilogies when I was a teenager. And I've kind of collected, I think, the last 2 books in the Elenium and the first in the Tamuli. And I'd like to have finished like the first book and then the second and third. But then I found out about a year or so ago that he spent some time in prison for physically abusing his adopted children, along with his wife. And that largely has put a kibosh on that. So while it's one thing to say a personal life depending if you extend personal to public, Obviously, like with Orson Scott Card or J.K. Rowling, although in J.K. Rowling's case, I mean, she's such a terrible writer that it really doesn't matter. When I need the space, I mean, I'm going to get rid of the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets anyway, but it's, yeah, I mean, saying it shouldn't matter at all, I mean, it's hard when it's, and to not have it matter. Either in interpreting the work, which is its own thing, or in wanting to, I mean, it's, yeah. So I don't know necessarily if anybody else exactly has the same problem that I do or not. Anyway, let's move on. Question number 17. If you could only read one genre for the rest of time, what would it be? Right now, it would be history. Now, I also define history as including biography. So, I have a bit of a wider array than maybe some people who've done this tag. If it had to be like fiction, then I guess maybe fantasy. But I think right now history, because that's really what's been pleasing me a lot. Which I also include biography and other kind of genres in history too. Question number 18. Do you ever read a book without knowing anything about it? Yes, not infrequently. Most recently, I read Building an American Empire by Paul Freimer, which I completely thought it was about something else, when it was actually more about land policy, essentially. Like America's imperial land policy, how the United States sort of extended its territory and how it settled that territory at the expense of the native population of that. And I thought it was a bit more industrial. Question number 19. What author, genre, series, or culture can you just not get into? Why? I'm not entirely sure what quite is meant by culture. So I'm going to stick with author and genre. For author, obviously J.K. Rowling. She's a terrible writer. Is there any other author? I think I'll just stick with her for author. I'm blanking on any other author that I've tried multiple books by and haven't really had much success with. I mean, there are like specific books I've had goes at. I think maybe Margaret Atwood. I mean, even though I liked The Robber Bride, and I think Wilderness Tips, I haven't been able to get into anything else by her. Now, admittedly, that's Cat's Eye, The Blind Assassin, page of The Handmaid's Tale before I wanted to throw it across the room and realized it was a library book, so I couldn't do that. Margaret Atwood really should not write science fiction. I don't think she's terribly good at it. Although at least from The Handmaid's Tale. But then again, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you know I hate dystopic fiction. I hate it. Which is the genre. I hate dystopic fiction. I cannot get into it. And I don't want to try as I might with that. No. Question number 20. Do you think everyone should read? Why? I would like everybody to read. I mean, it's a wonderful thing that we can do. It expands us. It really sort of just transports us to other places, other people. It's an amazing thing that reading does that unfortunately not many people do on a consistent basis, that for them reading is torture or a struggle or just not pleasurable, in part probably because of how they were taught or given poor examples. But I mean, I would like for everybody to read. But again, with the should, I mean, I'm not really comfortable with the should of a lot of these questions. I would like, I mean, it would perhaps be ideal, wonderful, but the should. Anyway, BookTube, that was the philosophy of reading tag. I had a great time doing this tag, and I needed to pick me up, so thank you, Brandon, for that. Although hopefully I don't end up winning the copy of Marcus Aurelius. Not a huge fan of philosophy. So anyway, BookTube, thank you. I will see you tomorrow. Okay, I've got enough time to upload this. I'll upload this now. Anyway, before I start getting ready for work, which is not much, but anyway. So getting back on topic, BookTube, thank you. Have a great morning and afternoon, and I will see you tomorrow for weekly reads, which will be at its regular time, and hopefully I will have finished Thebes by Paul Cartledge. By then I should, because if I get 100 pages done today, or 102, I should be able to get the remaining 50 or so, 40 or so pages tomorrow. Excuse me, even with the doctor's appointment, because I'll read before I go, probably while I'm there, and then I should have enough time afterwards, because I think I got about 30 or 40 pages done within 2 hours yesterday, so wish me luck. But anyway, BookTube, until I see you again, stay safe.